Thanks, Aaron. So we're continuing our section, Freedom from Fear. We might get to the last few chapters in this section, and it's really going to bring us full circle and punctuate the fear piece of this. So as a matter of quick review, we'll talk about the wheel, spinning the big wheel. What's our ultimate concern? Everybody is religious because we all have an ultimate concern that consumes us. An idol is usually a good thing that we make the ultimate thing. Some of the stuff you can pick from the wheel, like who's your God, including sports.
Yeah.
This was our perspective, right? Our viewpoint. Do we have an ancient view or do we have a modern view? Do we try to transform our hearts so that we can deal with our circumstances and flourish in the situations that God puts us in? Or do we try to just transform our circumstances and not transform our hearts?
That's right. And this topic, we talked a little bit about the word both having a financial or a generous meaning as well as a healthy meaning. And so that's going to transition into some of the other items we're going to talk today.
Like putting money at the seat in your life, right? The most important seat, your ultimate concern.
That's right. Who is, or what is our idol or our God in many instances? Is it the right one? Who have we placed in that throne?
So the new chapter for today, if Jesus was serious, then we will recognize the illusion of control that money creates. So these next few chapters are about money and how it affects our lives.
Yeah, I think at the end of last week, we were talking about more than just money. We're talking about worldly wealth. Is it that influence? Is it other things than just the financial impact that we're really looking for in life? But really, to a certain degree, a lot of times or many times, it all comes down to money, right? That seems to have its grip on our lives.
Yeah, worldly wealth, right? Which is not necessarily bad. It's not inherently evil. It doesn't say money is the root of all evil, right? The love of money, driving for money to be your ultimate concern, or worldly wealth to be your ultimate concern.
That's right. Yeah. And so it's interesting, you know, money is this alluring master because it provides us this feeling of security or an illusion of divine power. Right? With money, we can do a lot of things. I mean, think back, early in your life. For Kristen and I, small apartment, one car, eating out not very frequently. Just imagine your life then and what money could or couldn't do versus maybe where you are today. Or maybe it's then vice versa. Maybe it's how you grew up. There was more money and there's not now. You can always see how money gets you out of some things or into some other areas. It's just life, unfortunately.
So the comparison graphic here, I don't know if you can read that, but there's two columns. The idol of money is the first one, and the living God is the second one. And so they all check these boxes except for the last item. So the first item is makes me feel safe and secure, offers me power over the world, gives me a sense of value and dignity. There is a community that shares my worship, but the last one will never abandon me even after death. And so that's why I think this draw to worldly riches is so compelling, because it checks most of those boxes.
Yeah, the girls really like a song, and I don't remember who it's by, but it's a song about the richest man in the cemetery. Doesn't do him much good. So we do have some examples.
I think.
Examples, right? Money will provide for our needs and our desires. It will overcome scarcity, which we'll talk about more in the next chapter, I think. Manipulates those around us. It kind of sounds scary.
It does. And I looked at that when I first saw this in the slide. I went, man, but it's accurate, right? And it distorts the world around you.
Yeah. When have we used money to manipulate somebody else?
How much will it cost me to get out of this? You've heard those words before, right?
Yeah.
Well, we got, inside a church gathering, oh, well, if you don't do this, I'm going to not give.
Right.
Yep. That's manipulation with your giving, either do what I want or I'm not giving. Y'all keep coming, but I'm not gonna give.
Right, it's conditional.
Yes.
Mhm.
How about isolate us from challenges that others face? This is probably a fairly common one,
Mhm.
especially in America. That's right.
Absolutely. And we saw that a lot, for this COVID situation, right? So initially it was, well, we're all in the same boat. Well, it turned into, well, we're not all in the same boat, but we're all in the same storm. So we can isolate ourselves based on our worldly wealth. We may have ways to comfort ourselves that other people don't.
And finally, as an example here, create opportunities for those who haven't. I think we've clearly seen that in the news over the last couple of years with some of the college entrance scandals. Yeah, money will open doors for you.
Mhm. And it is an appealing alternative,
Yeah.
just like all these check boxes, and it checks most of them. So it's very alluring, right? It can draw you in.
Yeah, and this is, if we don't recognize this is how we use money, right, it's kind of scary. It becomes that power. It becomes a lever in our everyday power.
Mhm.
I kind of chuckled when I saw that graph because there are certain cultures, like the Egyptian culture, and then I'm specifically thinking of the Chinese culture, where we visited certain sites where they had almost entire cities built underground to entomb a dead emperor with all kinds of wealth, sometimes even buried family members. I think in the Egyptian times they would even bury wives alive, so they could take their wives to the afterlife, they could take their wealth, they could take their possessions.
Okay.
And I just think that's funny because it really does kind of show you that they're trying to take that lifetime security with them into death.
Right, exactly. Trying to cross that boundary.
Yeah.
So we have some scriptures to go along with this.
We do, starting with Matthew 19:24. Again, I tell you, it is easier for a camel to go through the eye of a needle than for a rich man to enter the kingdom of God. I think we've heard this camel in the eye of a needle a number of different ways. Was it the way the camel got through a city gate? Was this Jesus using hyperbole? Because he does use a gnat and a camel other places, right? You swallow the camel. I'm pretty sure he wasn't referring that they were doing that. So again, either way, it is showing it's difficult. It's difficult. And in the world today, I think the statistic is if you make over $50,000 a year, you're in the upper 1% of earners. So define wealth, right?
Yep.
And I like the way that continues there in Matthew 19 too, because the disciples are like, well, then who can be saved? And that's what Jesus said. Well, humanly speaking, it is impossible. But with God, everything is possible. So it's not whether we have money or don't have money. We can save ourselves. It's going to be God. Everything is possible with God. And so if we're wealthy or and we're very wealthy in our country compared to the other parts of the world. And if that's what we're trusting in and putting our faith in, it's only God. But if we don't have anything and we're destitute, really, well, it's still God that's going to be the one that's going to save us.
Exactly. So do you want to do Luke or do you want to do Hebrews?
I don't know. Do you think we have time to do Luke?
I think so. Yeah, let's do Luke. Because Hebrews kind of makes your point. We're going to get that in a minute, dude.
Yeah. So Luke 12, 13. I'm going to have to try the improvers here. I like it. Someone in the crowd said to him, this is from Luke 12, sorry, starting at 13. Yeah, does that work? Someone in the crowd said to him, "Teacher, tell my brother to divide the inheritance with me." And Jesus replied, "Man, who appointed me a judge or an arbiter between you?" Then he said, "Watch out. Be on your guard against all kinds of greed. A man's life does not consist in the abundance of his possession." And he told them this parable. The ground of a certain rich man produced a good crop. He thought to himself, "What shall I do? I have no place to store up my crops." Then he said, "This is what I'll do. I'll tear down my barns and build bigger ones, and there I will store up my grain and my goods. And I'll say to myself, you have plenty of good things laid up for many years. Take life easy, eat, drink, and be merry. But God said to him, you fool, this very night your life will be demanded from you. Then who will get what you have prepared for yourself? This is how it will be with anyone who stores up things for himself, but is not rich towards God. And again, it goes directly in contrast to the verse in the Sermon on the Mount. Store up for yourself treasures in heaven. Right? This man was storing the treasures on earth for himself.
And so Hebrews 13:5 kind of ties David's point and also to the next chapter. Keep your lives free from the love of money and be content with what you have. Because, this is a big because God has said, never will I leave you, never will I forsake you. So automatically, he's changed our focus, right? Don't rely on money, don't rely on worldly things. Rely on me, first of all. And second of all, I will not leave you, I will not forsake you. So one, shift your focus. Two, trust us.
Yeah, interesting. Keep your lives free from the love of money. And then this sounds so simple. And be content. Be content.
I think America is the land of anti-content.
Right.
Is anti-contentment a word? Discontentment,
I
maybe?
need to refresh my house for spring.
Exactly, that's right. Need a little refresher.
My wardrobe. Whatever.
That's right.
You know,
I wasn't gonna say
well,
that.
you were talking about, when you and Kristen first got married and began one room apartment, one car, all of this kind of stuff. You know, I mean, I think back to Sherry and I, when we got married, I mean, I left a very high-paying position with Walmart management, and then went to a church that was paying me $250 a week, and that's not even, they didn't take the taxes out or anything. That was still, I had to do all of that on my own. And you know, I mean, we ate out once a week, went to Pizza Hut, got one little pizza, split that thing. But you know, we were so happy,
Right.
and we felt so free.
Right.
And then, you know, the more money you make, then the more money you want to make.
That's right.
And then the more money you make, the more, you know, it seems to burn. I mean, seriously, it burdens you and stuff. And, you know, we often look back and think, wow, you know, life is so simple.
Right, right.
And it really complicates things when you have, you know, when we talk about the love of money, we can do it in different levels. And I think at one point in all of our lives, we probably struggle somewhat with the love of money because we think we've got to have money for this to happen.
Right, right. And I don't think it's a Christian artist, but I think there's an artist that's more money, more problems. Right? And that's exactly what it is, right? This is about contentment and I'm sure it's totally not. We do that to ourselves, right? So we're going to work through that in the next couple chapters. If Jesus was serious, then we will always have enough.
I'm forgetting what I'm doing.
That's all right. We got some chats too here. Sorry. Pay attention to our audience. So is the why behind the difficulty of the rich man being in the kingdom the same as we talked last week? The continuum of generosity and greed. This is from Alan Moore. In other words, our relationship to money. Yeah, I think that's part of it, right? Because this is our relationship to money. The love of money. Money is not the problem. We don't want to make money the problem. We don't want to make worldly wealth the problem. But the love of money, how we deal with it. It's an appealing alternative to trusting God.
And that sums up a lot, right? That control, that ability to influence, that is the appealing alternative to true trusting God, just like Hebrews was just saying.
Mm-hmm.
And the Bible shows that tension, right? You know, the scarcity, our myth of scarcity or needing more versus God's vision of abundance, or I'll be there when you need me. I'll be there for you. Which, when do we need him? All the time, but he will be there. So can we rely on that? Just like the sparrow or the flowers rely on him? Or do we try to control a portion of that? Yeah.
This abundance versus scarcity is shown in this graphic here too. You know, will there be enough? Fundamentally, what do you believe? Right? What's in your heart? Do you believe that God is enough? Do you believe that God will take care of you? Or do we believe that, well, I got to do some of this myself. I have to keep some of this for myself. I have to think about the fact that scarcity plays a role in my life.
And a lot of times when we think, will there be enough? We think first of all about money, right? Will it continue my lifestyle? Will it allow me to buy that next car? Will it, right? That's not always what we're trying to, that's not the other side of, will there, or it's not just that money providing.
Right, exactly.
But that's the first thing mentally we see in our minds.
Thought of an example in the Bible that's both and. Abraham, he was extremely wealthy. He had flocks and herds and land and all kinds of stuff. And he trusted God, and when God said go, he went.
Right.
So I appreciate that the Bible shows us the whole spectrum.
Exactly.
Because you don't have to walk through life with this attitude of scarcity and fear and everything. Because he did have a lot, and yet he followed hard after God, and it's held up, you know, throughout history as a man of God and one who had God's heart. So, yeah, I think we have
examples all across the spectrum.
Yeah.
Exactly.
And like Chris is saying, I mean, you know, they accumulate wealth and they passed it on to their children. You know, so there's nothing wrong. It depends on our heart and where's our focus. That's the key.
Exactly. Exactly. Then I'm going to chop up this next sentence, right? In the name of self-preservation, we get greedy, right? Which leads to injustice. We don't put other people first. And it's because we live in fear of not having enough. I'm gonna flip that around.
You did. I like that.
Yeah,
You did that.
self-preservation. That drives us. You know, where's my fear? This is all driving us back to this core discussion about fear. Where is our fear? Our fear and scarcity, and we're going to talk more about fear in the next couple slides. But do we believe that with God there is abundance, and that we can do generous things with our worldly wealth, and maybe take a little risk of not having enough for ourselves? Because if we were able to survive, right, in the old days, and it was one little pizza a week, or, you know, one apartment and one car, we could probably survive that again. And are we empowered to love others with our money?
Yeah, it's how do we see the world in this area? Are we trapped by the myth of scarcity, or are we free to live in God's abundance?
So here's the question we should discuss. This is discussion time. I think we should make this discussion time. So what do our priorities become if we believe in God's abundance rather than scarcity? What becomes a priority in our lives if we believe in God's abundance? We believe He's there for us. If we believe never will He forsake us or leave us. What do you guys think? How do our priorities change? Tough question.
Do our priorities need to change? Or do we have this okay?
this is lifelong wrestling. I mean, you know, I don't think there's not a myth of scarcity. There is a reality of scarcity in the world, right?
Well, but it's our definition of scarcity, right? What are we saying is scarce?
Yeah, but I'm reading about this lady in Afghanistan who has sold 2 of her daughters into slavery and has sold her kidney to pay for food for her family. Look, that is a reality of scarcity.
Yeah.
That is not a myth of scarcity.
Exactly.
But that doesn't mean we need to live in fear in our own lives here.
Right.
So it's this interesting real view of the world, you know, paired with a faith in a God who is a provider.
Right.
Right?
When I think the irrational part of that is that we think that that could be around the corner for us.
Right.
So we turn it into perceived scarcity. What if I did have to do this? Man, I better, keep just in case, just in case, just in case, as opposed to, hey, I'm grabbing so that I can support that lady.
So it's not feeding fear,
Right, exactly.
but actually acknowledging reality.
Right, absolutely. And in the end, right, the reality is that God will never leave us or forsake us.
Right.
We may have to go through horrible things, really sorry for reality, but we have the opportunity to demonstrate our faith in God's abundance. Right, and dependence. And so one of the things that, this Russia-Ukraine thing, I saw this morning, that people are, Airbnb, where you can rent, rooms and houses and all that stuff. So people, Americans, like 60% of the rentals now in Ukraine, people are renting Airbnbs. They never expect to go. They're just finding a creative way to be generous with those people who rent out their houses. And so that's a way that they have demonstrated that we have enough. We're going to, we don't have to take this trip. I can spend my vacation money on this trip and never expect to take this trip. I just want to support it. And then those people, in turn, are using their homes and their apartments and their places to support people that need places to go. So that's the difference between the scarcity mentality and the abundance mentality. Like, I have enough, I can be generous.
I was just thinking, as Kristen was telling about the lady in Afghanistan, and I don't know the situation or anything like that, if she's a believer or not, but that's where community comes in and to share. And I can maybe share my pot of beans with you, and it may not be much, but and that's one of the things that Galena Park told me early on. I was amazed at how poor many of them are. Just as poor can be. But yet, if somebody was making a pot of chili, they shared that with everybody around them, and people would just come and they would do stuff like that, and I just think maybe that speaks to us as a community sometimes of believers, that we're so afraid that we won't even let go of our means to help somebody else.
Right. Exactly.
The Depression was definitely an example of scarcity.
Yes.
Lots of people. And that fear continued on through generations, through their actions. I remember my parents, saving everything, which becomes a burden on somebody eventually.
I mean, and I guess when we say the myth of scarcity, there's no question that scarcity is real, but a lot of times what makes us go the opposite way is our fear of something that hasn't happened to us yet.
Yes.
The whole putting in what if.
Yes.
What if.
Correct.
Well, your commercials all the time on television now, what little I watch, but do you have enough for retirement? You may not have enough for retirement. You got to have this certain amount for retirement. And it's a huge failure. So all of a sudden you begin to think, oh, wow. And so you begin to fret and worry and hoard.
Yes.
Exactly.
The hoard.
So here's some suggestions for priorities. Oh, no, we're
No,
doing
just
statistics.
forgot.
Sorry, we're doing statistics.
So-
So that ties into Betty's point. Perfect.
Yes, so I didn't pull the statistics today, he did. So this is his nerd.
He's influenced me now.
But this is fascinating.
This is all Barna.
Is it Barna?
Yeah,
It is Barna.
Darren's favorite group.
Yes,
So
and this should be shaming. Okay.
it is a little bit. So we're gonna go back and forth here. So let's talk about where in the US people are the most generous. And I don't have any of these stats up there. I'm just gonna read them a little bit. The 3 most charitable cities in America are all in Idaho.
They give away a lot of potatoes.
Yeah, they give away
That's
lots
a
of
joke.
But some of these are based on dollar amounts, some of these stats. So Christians in these cities give on average almost $18,000 annually to charity. Christian families in those cities give away that much. Las Vegas is second with 10,000. So from almost 18,000 to 10,000 average,
Yes.
America's largest cities don't even make it on the top 50 list. Places like New York, Phoenix, Houston, Chicago, Los Angeles, Philadelphia, they all give less than $3,300 per year. So in Idaho, from 18,000, right, to 10,000 in Las Vegas, to the next ones are 3,300.
And these places in Idaho are not making equivalent of what the people in the largest cities are making.
Is this based on their income tax returns?
It does not say.
Yeah,
It does not say.
Right.
It does not say.
Doesn't say.
Oh, you want me to take
Yeah, you have
over?
the next section.
Okay.
You have all the data on the data.
I haven't, yeah, you know, it's interesting also, they broke this down by age and generation. 84% of millennials, and for those of you who need a definition there, it's 81 to 96, report giving less than $50 to charity per year.
Millennials.
Okay. How many of us?
They say charity is important, right?
Yeah.
So.
But they may give more time, but they definitely
And
don't.
they may go to Goodwill and
Give-
say, I don't need the receipt.
Yeah,
That's right.
right.
To the tune of
Yeah,
18,000.
the most generous generation is Gen X, which is 65 to 1980. So that's always interesting.
Those Gen Xers.
Yeah, there's,
We also talked about how when we first got married and started off, we didn't have anything, and a lot of times we get to a point later on in our
Yes.
life where we have more money.
Mhm.
And that may be why you're seeing those
Differences.
millennial kids not donating right now heavily. Hopefully, when they get to where they feel like they've got some financial stability, they will
Yeah.
give more. I don't know,
But-
they are big proponents of helping and saving the world and all, but
they are. There's one caveat
those
there.
ideals, when they really have money to spend, they may save the world.
That's right. There's one caveat, and I heard this on a podcast. This happens in every generation. The generation, the youngest generation is always pushing for more charity, more changes in kind of the way we look at the world from a charity perspective. But while they're in that time frame, you're right, they give the least amount of money theoretically because they have the least. But most of their excuses are because, well, I need to save for later. I got to make sure I'm good financially now before I can give. So it's interesting, like just the scarcity comparison, right? They're more, while they think generosity is higher on the list, they're more interested in their own self-preservation also.
And that ties in with a faith base.
Right,
Yes.
exactly.
Which is a
Go ahead.
great lead-in,
Oh,
because all of these statistics we just said
Yep.
apply as well to the Christians and the non-Christians.
Yeah, we have more interesting data here.
And now we'll switch to just the Christian view of these statistics. Did you want to finish something?
I can't remember what.
Okay, sorry.
Okay, so according to more of these stats, only 5% of church members give regularly. Now, I'm not saying this building, everybody, hold on, I'm not saying this building, but across the US, 5% give regularly. To your point, households, Christian households that make more than $75,000 a year are the least charitable. Okay, so the idea is, yeah, when I'm young and I have money, I gotta say, I gotta do this stuff. However, the data bears out that when you get to that point and you're making more than 75, you become less charitable. This ties into David's point, right?
Are you ready for the next one? This comes to your point. Today, Christians give 2.5% of their income, which compares to the Great Depression of 3.3%. So we are giving less than they were during the Great Depression, when there was actually scarcity.
But in the Great Depression, they did share.
But that's,
Over to his point.
yeah, it's so
I
weird
had
though,
that in
right?
my own family, because my mother told about my father's family.
Yeah.
Nobody had anything. She said, but the Coopers, that's my maiden name. She said they gave because your dad was a hunter and they always had food.
Yeah.
And she said they gave generously to other people. So I mean, I just know that through a
Right.
personal.
But
I
we're,
can't speak for everyone.
yeah, today we're giving less than we did during the Great Depression. percentage wise.
Isn't that something? Let that sink in. Right, like you said, actual scarcity, right? They gave almost a percentage more on average than we do today.
And you wonder why.
Yeah.
Well, there's more things and more toys to buy in today's world that I think really draw people in. And they're expensive toys and things. They're not just, you know, a $10.99 item.
Right, right. More distraction.
More distraction, that's right.
And when you get to my age, you just want to clear all that junk out.
Right.
Yeah. And you talk to your kids,
Mhm.
and it's like, all of that, they don't want your stuff.
Right,
Have
exactly.
enough.
Right.
You're saving something, thinking your kids.
Yeah.
I don't do that.
Yeah. What can I carry in my backpack? That's all I need. 37% of those who consider themselves evangelicals do not give to churches at all. 37%. You check the box and say, I'm evangelical Christian, don't give at all.
And this was a study from 2019. And this Barna is a Christian research group that we've used a lot.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah, crazy.
What about that last stat? When it comes to giving away 10% of finances, we know the magic 10% number, only 2.7% of people, religious or non-religious, fall in this category. Only 2.7% of people. So I think we delude ourselves, right? We deceive ourselves and we think, man, I'm really generous, man, I'm really charitable, man, I'm going to do more, when I have time, when I have more money. But stats are stats. This is kind of grim, right?
Well, I think it's also a mindset that each individual has. They can look at money one of two ways. That they've been blessed by God to have what they are receiving because of the talents He's given them to work the job that brings in the money or whatever. Or I've earned this. It's mine. I have the right to do what I want with it.
Right.
And you're going to see totally different results from those two mindsets.
Absolutely.
Yep. And that's, again, we've talked so much about this over the last couple of weeks. This is a check on our heart, right? This is what we're trying to make sure. And this is what Jesus was doing was, what is your heart in all of this as it relates to murder, adultery, giving, storing up treasures? Let's look at our hearts.
So that ties us back to what should our priorities be? Here are some suggestions. Instead of just being rich, right, worldly wealthy, we should be rich in love, rich in faith, rich in knowledge of God, rich in life, and rich in the work of the Lord. Right? These should be our priorities, not this accumulation based on scarcity, the myth of scarcity or the fear of scarcity. It's called that, the fear of scarcity, right? But because we believe in God's abundance, we should do these things. These should be our priorities. How do we love others? How do we grow in the knowledge of God? How do we demonstrate our faith? How do we live a fulfilling life? And how do we live in the work of the Lord? That should be what drives us, right? Rather than scarcity and fear. That's right. Generosity.
So, preview to next week. What he just said is we don't want to live in this fear. Next week, we're going to talk and start talking about, if Jesus was serious, then we will not be enslaved by our fears. And again, we're putting this in a monetary context right now and the fears of that. And it just kind of continues. And then where else does that fear carry over to?
So Alan had another question. So 70,000 is the price point of greed in our culture today. Maybe it is, right? That's kind of the implication of the data. We can drill down to this more, but that's the number they chose to give us, 75,000. Something to think about. Okay, next week's going to be great.
That's right. So either move to Idaho or Las Vegas, and you'll become more generous.
Okay, thank you for your time. Enjoy your Sunday.